I went to the library to study in peace, but the way she shushed me felt more like a secret than a warning, especially once my friend's sister showed up and took the seat right beside me. The story begins with a gentle sense of routine and solitude. The narrator, a 24-year-old university graduate preparing for his teaching exams, has been spending his afternoons at the Old Town Library. He comes here partly for the quiet, partly because the soft, amber light through the high arched windows feels like a safe place where the world slows down. We open on a rainy Thursday. The library smells faintly of polished wood and paper that's turned slightly yellow with age. The hum of the rain against the tall windows muffles every sound. The narrator arrives carrying a damp messenger bag, brushing water off his sleeves as he scans the rows of tables. He likes the far corner near the window, where a single brass lamp casts a pool of warm light on the dark wooden table. Here we introduce Clara, the head librarian, early 40s, poised but approachable, her dark hair gathered in a loose knot, a pair of reading glasses sliding down the bridge of her nose as she sorts a stack of returned books. She's not just a background figure. Her presence shapes the room's stillness. When he accidentally drops a pen and it clatters on the floor, Clara looks up from across the room and gives him a quiet, knowing smile before gently raising a finger to her lips, a shush that feels almost playful rather than stern. This tiny gesture sets the first flicker of connection. It's not romantic yet, just a shared moment that makes the narrator unexpectedly aware of her. The keynote guides the first part of the script to focus on atmosphere and emotional groundwork. Emotional goal: show the narrator's initial sense of calm loneliness and how Clara's small gestures stir something unspoken, an interest he hadn't expected. Narrative progression: establish the library as more than a setting. It's a refuge that quietly begins to feel personal. Sensory details: describe the warmth of the lamp light on his hands as he opens his notebook, the muffled sound of pages turning nearby, the soft scent of rain drifting in whenever the heavy wooden doors open. Later that same afternoon, as the narrator studies, he notices someone entering. Elena, his best friend's sister. She's in her early 40s too, carrying a folded umbrella and shaking raindrops from her sleeves. She greets Clara warmly. The two clearly know each other from the community book club, and then notices the narrator, surprised but amused to find him here. This moment should end the first part on a note of curiosity and subtle anticipation. Clara's shushing gesture leaves a lingering warmth, hinting at her quiet authority and gentle humor. Elena's unexpected arrival shifts the narrator's focus, adding a spark of intrigue. He's suddenly aware that his usual quiet corner won't be so quiet anymore. The part closes with the narrator stealing a glance between the two women talking softly near the front desk, realizing this day in the library feels different, like the beginning of something he can't quite name. The first keynote sets up tone and pacing. Slow, sensory-rich, with understated emotional tension, just enough to pull the audience in and make them want to know what happens next. The second part of the story moves from quiet observation to genuine interaction, allowing the narrator's inner thoughts to deepen while keeping the pace unhurried. It's the following Saturday afternoon. The rain has stopped, leaving the streets damp and shining under a pale autumn sun. When the narrator arrives at the library, he notices Elena already seated at the long oak table by the window, the very spot he usually claims. She's reading a thick historical novel, her posture graceful but relaxed, her hair falling slightly out of its clip as the sunlight glints off the page. Clara, the librarian, is at the desk near the stacks, rearranging a display of poetry books. The soft click of her low heels against the wooden floor fills the room more than any voice would. The narrator hesitates near the table, unsure whether to sit across from Elena or move elsewhere. She looks up and smiles, warm but slightly teasing, and gestures to the empty chair across from her. "You always sit here, don't you? I figured you'd show up eventually." Her tone is friendly, but it carries an ease that unsettles him in a pleasant way. She's known him as her younger brother's friend, but here, in the hush of the library, the dynamic feels subtly different. Emotional goals for this part: begin to establish comfort and shared space between the narrator and Elena. Hint at the narrator's growing awareness of the age difference. Curiosity mixed with respect. Keep Clara present as a grounding figure. Her quiet attention makes the narrator slightly self-conscious, yet comforted. As they both settle into reading, the story lingers on sensory-rich details, the whisper of Elena's pages turning and the occasional brush of her sleeve against the table's edge. The scent of her peppermint tea drifting from the travel mug beside her book. The warmth of the late afternoon sun sliding across the table, catching in the golden strands of her hair. A small moment changes the air between them. Elena reaches for a pen that rolls across the table, and their fingers briefly touch. It's nothing more than a polite exchange, but the narrator notices the soft texture of her skin and the quiet steadiness in her gaze as she thanks him. Clara drifts by to check on their section of the library, pausing long enough to ask if they're finding everything they need. Her voice is low, carrying that same unhurried warmth as before. The narrator senses that Clara has noticed the subtle shift between him and Elena, though she says nothing, just leaves them with a small smile. By the end of this part, the narrator reflects inwardly. This shared silence felt more personal than most conversations he's had lately. He leaves the library with his notes unfinished, but with an unexpected eagerness to return. The third part shifts from gentle interactions to revealing vulnerability, the first time the characters show pieces of themselves beyond polite smiles. The day begins with a sudden October downpour. The narrator rushes into the library late in the afternoon, damp from the drizzle, his jacket clinging to his shoulders. The air inside is thick with the comforting scent of rain-soaked wool, paper, and a hint of cinnamon from the cafe across the street. He spots Clara behind the circulation desk, carefully drying the edges of a returned book with a soft cloth. Her hair is slightly undone from the humidity, a few wisps escaping her usual neat knot. She notices his damp sleeves and quietly slides a folded hand towel across the desk to him without a word, an act so simple yet unexpectedly thoughtful. When he moves toward his usual table, he finds Elena there again, this time with her laptop open and a sketchbook at her side. She looks up as he approaches, her expression shifting from focus to a half-smile that feels warmer than before. "You look like you ran through a river," she teases softly. The two of them settle into a companionable quiet. Outside, rain beats against the tall windows, turning the world beyond the glass into a blur of gray and silver. Inside, the brass lamps cast a golden halo over their table, making it feel almost separate from the rest of the room. Emotional goals for this part: show acts of kindness that feel intimate without being overtly romantic. Begin to explore vulnerability, stories shared, hints of personal history. Strengthen the bond between narrator, Elena, and Clara through understated gestures. After an hour of working in silence, the narrator notices Elena's gaze drifting toward the rain outside. Her usually composed expression softens, revealing a quiet melancholy. Sensing her mood, he asks gently, "Bad weather or bad day?" Elena hesitates, then closes her sketchbook. Her fingers trace the edge of the cover as she admits, "This place, it reminds me of when I used to come here with my mom. She loved reading by that window." Her voice dips, almost lost under the sound of the rain. The moment feels delicate, as though he's been allowed into a part of her memory that's rarely shared. He responds simply, telling her about his own father bringing him here as a boy to study, how he learned to love the smell of old pages because of those afternoons. This brief exchange creates a thread of empathy between them. The library is not just a setting, but a shared touchstone of their pasts. As evening approaches, Clara begins dimming the overhead lights. Before leaving, she gently places a stack of poetry books on their table, saying with a faint smile, "For the next rainy day." The gesture feels like her quiet way of encouraging their newfound connection. The part closes with the narrator walking Elena to the door under his umbrella. They don't say much, just a comfortable silence accompanied by the soft patter of rain above them. But when they part ways at the corner, he realizes the walk itself felt significant, like a promise of more to come. By the fourth part, the foundation of trust has been laid. Now, the story begins to draw attention to unspoken tension, a quiet awareness that lingers in pauses, gestures, and glances rather than words. It's a crisp Saturday morning. The sky outside is bright but cold, and sunlight slants through the library's tall windows like ribbons of gold dust in the air. The narrator arrives early, hoping for a peaceful start to his weekend study session, but as he enters the reading room, he finds Elena already there. She's leaning over an open novel, her scarf still draped loosely around her shoulders, strands of hair falling forward as she scribbles a note in the margin. The moment he steps closer, she looks up, eyes bright in the morning light, and for a heartbeat, neither speaks. It's not awkward. It feels like a mutual acknowledgement of the quiet connection they've built. Emotional goals for this part. Shift the dynamic from friendly to mutually aware, using silence and subtle gestures. Highlight the narrator's growing attraction, not rushed or dramatic, but an awareness he tries to downplay. Deepen the presence of Clara as a calm observer who senses the unspoken bond. The narrator chooses the seat beside Elena rather than across from her, surprising himself. Their chairs are close enough that the edges of their elbows almost brush when they lean forward. The proximity changes the air around them. Suddenly, he notices the faint fragrance of her scarf, a soft hint of lavender. Clara appears with her usual quiet grace, carrying a new stack of books to shelf. She pauses near their table to greet them and gently reminds the narrator. Keep your voice low if you're going to ask questions, her eyes sparkling with the same half-playful authority from the first day. The narrator chuckles softly, sensing that her shushing has become less of a rule and more of an inside joke between them. As the day passes, the story leans into sensory-rich moments of closeness. Elena adjusts her scarf, and her fingers lightly brush his sleeve as she pulls it away from his side of the table. While pointing out a line in his notes, she leans in just enough that a strand of her hair grazes his wrist. He notices the warmth of her presence before pulling his focus back to the page. Their shared laughter over a mispronounced author's name lingers just a beat too long, both of them falling quiet after, as if aware of something unsaid. Later, as the late afternoon light fades into soft shadows, Elena grows thoughtful. She asks, "Do you ever wonder if places remember the people who sit in them?" The narrator considers her question, sensing that it's less about the library and more about her own feelings. He replies gently, "Maybe they do. Maybe they hold pieces of us we forget to carry with us." This exchange adds a layer of introspection, a moment that feels tender without crossing any boundaries. Clara closes the library at dusk. On their way out, Elena's scarf catches on her chair. The narrator kneels to untangle it, his fingers brushing the soft wool as he hands it back to her. Their eyes meet briefly, and in that quiet exchange, the audience can feel the weight of words they're not yet ready to say. By this point, the library has become a shared haven, but every slow-burn romance needs a moment where that warmth feels threatened. Part 5 explores how life outside the library intrudes on their growing bond, revealing insecurities and deepening the story's emotional stakes. It's a weekday evening. The narrator arrives later than usual, after a long and exhausting day at work. The air is damp and heavy with the smell of wet leaves from the rain earlier. As he steps inside, the library is quieter than ever. The usual glow of the lamps feels muted, as if the space senses his mood. He spots Elena at their usual table, but tonight her posture is different. She's sitting more upright, her arms crossed loosely in front of her as though holding herself still. Clara is at the front desk, returning books for a small line of patrons, her calm efficiency a contrast to the unsettled atmosphere near the window. When he greets Elena, her smile is polite but doesn't quite reach her eyes. The narrator senses the shift immediately. There's a trace of distance that wasn't there before. Emotional goals for this part. Allow the character's vulnerability to surface through conflict born of misunderstanding, not malice. Reveal Elena's hesitation about the age difference and public perception. Challenge the narrator to express his feelings honestly while respecting her boundaries. The tension grows quietly as they begin working side by side. Instead of the easy laughter they shared before, there's an unspoken heaviness between them. The narrator finally asks, softly, "Did I do something wrong?" Elena hesitates, then closes her book with care. Her voice is low, almost uncertain. "It's not you. I keep wondering if I'm being foolish. I'm older. I've had my share of complicated choices. I don't want to make your life harder." Her words hit the narrator harder than he expects. He's aware of the age gap, but hearing her voice it aloud makes the space between them feel real for the first time. He admits, with an unguarded honesty, "I come here because it feels like the one place I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not." "You're part of that." Sensory-rich details enhance the mood. the way Elena's fingers absently trace the rim of her teacup as she talks, the soft creak of their chairs as both lean forward slightly, unconsciously mirroring each other's posture, the distant sound of Clara shelving books, the steady rhythm grounding them even as emotions rise. Their conversation is interrupted when Clara approaches to remind them the library will be closing soon. Her gentle tone breaks the tension enough for both to step back emotionally. As Clara moves away, she leaves a small, almost knowing smile behind, a quiet signal that she senses more than she lets on. As they pack up to leave, the narrator offers to walk Elena out, but she declines with a kind, if weary, smile. Not tonight. I just need to clear my head. Her refusal isn't cold, more like a pause to gather herself. He watches her go, her figure disappearing into the misty night beyond the library doors. The hollow ache he feels isn't from rejection, but from realizing how much he's begun to care. A few days have passed since that uneasy evening. The narrator has avoided the library, unsure if his presence would only make things harder for Elena. But the absence gnaws at him. The silence of his apartment feels emptier without the soft sounds of pages turning or the occasional shared glance across the oak table. On a brisk Wednesday afternoon, he decides to return. The late autumn light filters through the tall windows in muted amber tones, and the air inside carries the familiar scent of old paper and floor polish, comforting yet tinged with the memory of their last conversation. Clara is reshelving books in the biography section when she notices him come in. She greets him with her usual gentle composure, but pauses long enough to add quietly, "She's here, in the poetry aisle." Her words aren't intrusive, just offered with a warmth that feels like encouragement. He finds Elena tucked between two towering shelves near the back, seated on a low wooden stool with a slim poetry book in her hands. The light above her flickers softly, casting delicate shadows over her profile. She doesn't notice him at first, so he takes a moment to absorb the scene, the serene curve of her posture, the way a stray wisp of hair brushes her cheek. When she finally looks up and meets his eyes, there's a brief silence that feels charged yet calm. Emotional goals for this part show the narrator taking the first step toward reconciliation, emphasizing respect and sincerity. Allow Elena to reveal her internal conflict and vulnerability, making her concerns feel deeply human. Use the library's quieter corners as a symbol of safe space where honesty can bloom. He begins softly, almost at a whisper in the hush of the stacks. "I owe you an apology for not understanding that night. I didn't want to push, I just didn't want distance either." Elena closes the book carefully and sets it on her lap. Her voice carries a mix of relief and hesitation as she replies, "You didn't do anything wrong. I just panicked. I've spent so much time being the steady one for others that I forgot how it feels to be seen, really seen." This admission shifts the tone. The narrator steps closer, not invading her space, but close enough that their words no longer need to be raised above a whisper. Sensory-rich moments underscore their closeness. The faint rustle of a page as Elena absently thumbs the corner of the book during their talk. The soft hum of the library's old heating vent in the background, wrapping the moment in warmth. When she stands to return the poetry book to its shelf, their hands briefly brush as he reaches to take it from her, an almost accidental touch that carries quiet significance. Their conversation is gentle but affirming. They don't solve every uncertainty. Elena is still cautious about the future, but they agree to stop letting hesitation build walls between them. Before parting, Clara passes by on her way to the front desk. She doesn't linger, but the small, approving smile she offers feels like a silent blessing over their tentative truce. As Elena gathers her things, the narrator offers to walk her to her car. This time she agrees. The scene ends not with a dramatic embrace, but with a warm, companionable silence as they leave together beneath the crisp autumn sky, their steps unconsciously in sync. The final part focuses on resolution and quiet affirmation. After weeks of subtle gestures, thoughtful conversations, and moments of vulnerability, the characters finally reach a point of clarity. There's no dramatic declaration, only the comfort of two people choosing each other in a way that feels real and lasting. It's the first truly cold day of winter. A light snow has begun to fall, dusting the library's stone steps in white. The narrator arrives early, carrying 2 paper cups of tea, one cinnamon-spiced for himself and one peppermint for Elena. Inside, the library feels like a haven against the chill, the lamps glowing warmly, faint music playing from Clara's small radio at the front desk. Clara, as always, is part of the scene, greeting visitors, tending to the returns, humming softly to a carol that's just audible over the rustle of pages. Her steady presence adds a feeling of homecoming to the moment. Elena arrives soon after, shaking snow from her coat and rubbing her gloved hands together. There's an ease in her smile that wasn't there before, lighter, as though the weight of hesitation has slowly lifted. The narrator offers her the peppermint tea without ceremony, but the simple act speaks volumes. She accepts it with a soft laugh, remarking how he somehow always remembers the small things. Emotional goals for this part: deliver a warm, believable resolution that honors the slow build of their relationship. Show both characters making a mutual choice to keep moving forward together, not out of impulse, but understanding. Highlight Clara's quiet role as the constant presence who has witnessed their journey. They choose a table by the window where the snow outside drifts down in silent flakes. Their conversation begins lightly, sharing stories about favorite winter traditions, but gradually shifts into something more meaningful. Elena looks out at the snowfall for a long moment before saying, "I realized I was holding on to old fears more than reality. I didn't want to believe something good could start here, of all places." The narrator responds simply, "I wasn't looking for it either. But this place, and you, have been the best part of my days." The words aren't rehearsed or dramatic. They're quiet enough that only the two of them hear, yet they carry the weight of a genuine promise. Sensory-rich touches build the atmosphere, the steam curling up from their teacups and catching the light of the lamp, the muffled hush of falling snow against the window glass. Elena brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear as she leans forward to listen, her gloves resting on the table like a reminder of the cold outside and the warmth inside. As closing time approaches, Clara strolls by their table, remarking gently, "You two always make the library feel alive, even on the quietest days." Her comment carries no judgment, just an acknowledgement that their presence has changed the mood of the place. When they finally step outside together, the snow is falling more heavily, blanketing the street in soft white. The narrator opens his umbrella, holding it above both of them as they walk slowly toward Elena's car. Their shoulders brush as they walk, and at one point she slips her arm lightly through his, not for balance, but because it feels natural. They pause briefly under a street lamp near her car. No grand gestures, no kiss. Only a moment of unspoken understanding as they exchange a small, genuine smile. The snow continues to fall around them, wrapping the scene in a quiet kind of magic. If this story touched you as much as it touched me while writing it, don't forget to give it a like. It helps more people discover these slow-burn romances. Share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment between them felt the most real to you? And if you'd like more heartfelt age gap love stories set in cozy places like this, subscribe and join me for the next chapter of Gentle, Human.